Hey, thank you all. Thank you so much for your patience. And thank you again for joining us today and coming out to the symposium, and in particular to coming to this session. My name is Jed Sundwall. I work on open data at Amazon Web Services. And I'm part of the public sector sales organization. I do business development, and I help our customers who have data that it's their mission to share with the world. I help them understand how they can use our products to do that. And one of the sort of implications of sharing massive amounts of data in the cloud is that it enables the creation of new kinds of citizen services that couldn't exist before. I've worked at the intersection of technology and government and governance for quite a while. And this issue, the idea of how the cloud is enabling new kinds of citizen services, is near and dear to my heart because of years ago I started working for a large federal agency on their social media presence and developed their social media strategy. This was like 2008. And suddenly found myself at a cubicle with the password to a very large federal agency's Twitter account and just realized, this is weird. I have a lot of power to communicate on behalf of the government to a lot of people via social media. And it is the cloud and the internet that has enabled those new sorts of communication channels and has required the creation of new kinds of services and new kinds of software and applications to help manage those services. And so today we're very lucky to have three speakers. I'm going to introduce them each before they get up. So I'm going to start right now with John Landwehr. He's a VP at Adobe and is the CTO for public sector. Is that right? And please bear with me. I'm going to read his bio. It's very impressive. I couldn't memorize it in time. But his team is responsible for solutions incorporating electronic documents, digital media, web content management, analytics, and collaboration technologies to support business efficiency and optimization. John has been with Adobe for over a dozen years, working across numerous expertise lines, enterprise product lines, including Acrobat and Lifecycle. He's provided testimony to Congress, has been issued multiple security-related patents, and previously held positions at Next and Apple, which Next I think is really cool. So, and I already told him that. So, John, if you want to come up and kick us off. They took away the podium, and the clicker's right here. Okay.
Still got the clicker. We're good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're going to talk about citizen services. Adobe, of course, has been in business for decades, providing a variety of tools, but we found that for years, probably dating back to even the early IRS forms, were some of our first customers on how government was interacting with citizens digitally. And we'd like to tell you a little bit about some of the experiences that we've had, of course, since then across a variety of different medium. Starting off, though, kind of setting the stage, as we spend time with our customers, we hear a lot of consistent themes. IT is still bogged down in a lot of tactical activities. This includes things like spending a lot of time deploying any new application, spending a lot of time keeping that application up and running with ongoing patches, trying to anticipate spikes in demand to make sure that those citizen services will be available. Often that's difficult, whether it's because of things like the weather or national security issues or other things that may cause spikes in traffic. Organizations are still struggling, trying to connect the pieces from multiple vendors together just to get a citizen service up and running. And then, of course, there's mobile, right? All these new devices and all these new form factors, smartphones, tablets, phablets, TVs, ebook readers. There are a variety of ways now that citizens and consumers are consuming content, and you want to make sure that if you're offering a digital citizen service that you're not leaving anybody out. So it's causing a lot of organizations to continue to chase that. And we're also finding that after an organization does that big push to launch their new application, that 1.0, it can be a very long time before they ever get to a 2.0. So they miss that continuous innovation potential that's out there, which is important for all these reasons. So several years ago, the federal government published a great document to provide recommendations across government for providing digital services. And it's a nice stack that goes from kind of a, open data and content layer up through systems and processes. And then you've got digital services, that can be both internal and external, ultimately getting out to people, right? And a lot of organizations think when looking at that chart, let's start at the infrastructure layer. But when you do that, you often end up with an experience like this. If you're thinking just about, okay, what do I have that I need to plug my citizen data in, you often get very long forms like this where people are just saying, well, I have to collect all this stuff, so I'm just going to keep adding more and more pages to these forms. So us as poor consumers and citizens have to keep scrolling and checking boxes and filling in more data fields along the way. And that just doesn't seem anymore like the kind of experience that we as consumers are expecting. Because now with all these great mobile devices and what's been happening in the commercial world, we're expecting our online interactions to be very personalized, very relevant to us, and just what we're looking for, and to be very quick. So if we go back to that chart, instead of thinking about these applications from what you have in the infrastructure perspective first, we recommend starting with the people. What do they want? What do they need? What kind of devices do they have? And then how are you going to connect those people back to your processes? That makes a big difference when you're thinking about the kinds of applications and environments that you're rolling out. So instead of having a digital representation of a paper form that's still an 8.5 by 11 format on the screen, and have that be available on tablets, which is great, but why not make that much more interactive, graphically pleasing, easier to understand what's going on? I think a lot of the services that we've seen that are pretty innovative are taking like a TurboTax-like experience, right? Instead of just sitting down at a 1040 tax form and starting to fill it out, these tax preparation packages are doing a great job because it asks you a bunch of questions. And then based on your answers, shows you more fields or not. And then as you're going along the way, you can do things like electronic signatures to get applied to the form. Again, very easy environment to interact. But then, of course, at the very end, if you do need that document of record, these systems can take all that interactive data that you filled out in responsive web design and still populate the official documents of record. To deliver this, we've partnered with Amazon. I think since 2008 was when we first started rolling out managed services, because we wanted to make it easier for both commercial organizations and government to not only deploy their applications faster, but continuously deliver innovations of new services. The next session after this one is actually going to go into more details of this if you want to stick around from my colleagues at Adobe. Dean and Mitch are going to go through all these capabilities in a bit more detail, but we see this as an important part of the process to not just having the big push to a 1.0 launch, but continuously evolving your application, make sure it's secure, scalable, and very usable by the public. The kinds of applications that we've been rolling out within our managed services as part of Adobe's Cloud Solutions for Government essentially help organizations make, manage, measure, and mobilize your digital experiences. This manifests itself in things like electronic forms and digital signatures. We're the leader in electronic forms. We've been doing it for decades, again, back to some of our first customers like the IRS, so that you no longer have to go to the post office and see that big stack of paper where you'd pick up a tax form, right? That actually was a nice improvement to be able to get that online. We're also a leader in web content management, digital rights management for persistently protecting electronic information, whether it's PII, PHI with healthcare information, intellectual property, or even Homeland security information. So anything that you're routing digitally can only be opened and interacted with people that are authorized and need to know. We also provide asset management, other document services, web conferencing, e-learning, other online collaboration analytics, and available to deploy across platforms. Mobile is very important to us. We have a mobile-first philosophy now at Adobe, but of course cross-platform has always been important, because if you go back to why PDF was created, the portable document format was for just that, being portable. Back then it was Mac and Windows and even MS-DOS, but today clearly there's so many other platforms that you want to contemplate, and we want to make sure that we've got a consistent experience to deliver that. If you'd like more information, I do encourage you to stick around for the next session, or we also have a booth in the exhibit area as well. But that's a quick tour of what we're doing for citizen-facing digital services. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Get up here in time. Thank you again for coming.
Yep, thank you.
So up next we have Michael Donnelly from DHS, remarkable fellow, both a veteran and has twin girls. So he's going to talk to us about his work at the Department of Homeland Security. He's a geospatial data architect at DHS, and he provides subject matter expertise on existing and emerging geospatial data resources and technologies. He has over 15 years of experience in GIS across local, federal, and private sectors. Prior to joining the Geospatial Management Office at DHS, Mike was a watch officer at the DHS National Operations Center, supervising the GIS desk. He also served 10 years with the Army National Guard, deploying once in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and lives with his wife and twin girls in Northern Virginia. So if you guys were able to see all of the keynote, you may have noticed that we've been hosting a significant amount of geospatial data as part of our public data sets program. Michael, I'm excited, he's going to talk about what are the applications of storing large amounts of geospatial data in the cloud, and how can that be used to actually save citizens' lives. So here's the clicker. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Jed, for having me. So I'll caveat my presentation and say I'm not a photogrammetrist, even though I have about 100 slides that I need to get through that has photogrammetry subjects. I'm just kidding. It's only about 50. All right, bottom line up front, why I'm up here. The Department of Homeland Security uses remote sensing / GIS data to enable its mission. We use this to improve situational awareness and support the diverse Homeland Security mission space. So one of the things that I'll touch on a little bit is it's not so much as having the data that's important, it's making sure we can discover the data and accessing the data in a time-dominant fashion that'll make sure that mission's successful. So here's what I'm going to talk about. I'll table set it and discuss what DHS is for folks that may not be familiar with our department. We're still a new agency. How we use imagery and then terapixel capabilities kind of tie in what I'm talking about with what the application that we use at DHS and how that application uses Amazon Web Services. Okay, so DHS, we get a lot of bad press. Sometimes we get some good press. But this is kind of our 5 core missions. Yesterday, if you were at GeoEnt, my GIO, David Alexander, kind of talked about this broad spectrum of missions that DHS has. It's not just the emergency management role, but also it's the cyberspace, the securing our critical infrastructure, enforcing our borders and our immigration laws. We also actually have an Office of Health Affairs within DHS that tracks biological threats to the homeland. We have a nuclear detection office that monitors domestic nuclear power plants. So it's a really broad spectrum of missions. And where GIS and remote sensing plays a role in that is it enables that improvement of situational awareness. It gives us that spatial dimension to see where everything is going and how things are connected. I won't go through this as an eyesore, but this is actually our organizational structure. I belong to the CIO, which is under the management directorate of DHS, so we're at the head shed. we support the traditional components there on the bottom. So you have your traditional components like Custom and Border, the Coast Guard, FEMA, Secret Service, and then up top as you move up on the chart, you have your DHS offices that support those mission-enabling components. So one thing that if I'm going to foot stomp anything today, when I talk about the enterprise, I'm not just talking about, sorry, how do I go back? It doesn't matter. When I'm talking about the enterprise, I'm not just talking about those components that you saw in the previous slide, but we're talking about state and locals as well. So when we're talking about responding to an emergency, a natural disaster, that's typically done by the local levels first. The federal government doesn't really get involved in all the disasters that happen. So our core constituents are not just feds. They're actually the local officials, the firefighters, the fusion centers all over the country. Those are our customers at DHS. So who we are, why I'm up on this stage, I'm part of the Geospatial Management Office, like I mentioned. I'm the data guy. GMO provides a number of key functions for the department and enabling that geospatial capabilities. So everything from tradecraft to providing analytical services, a common infrastructure, so some place to stick all this data, and providing infrastructure to host all our applications that we use. But I'm the data guy. I'm tagged with coordinating resources and coordinating with our customers to see what data requirements they have and how the department can fulfill that. So remote sensing. So again, I'm not a photogrammetrist. I play one at my job. One of the things that we do with remote sensing is, we use that for interpreting, the latest imagery that's available in response to either an emerging incident or something that's happened already. So this is actually from this past Super Bowl. This is imagery collected, I want to say 10 days before the event. And this is a collaboration between DHS, Department of Justice, and then State of Arizona. And one of the things that we really needed was not just a place to put this data, but make sure that the data is accessible and discoverable easily by our customers so that the folks on the ground that are managing the situation or responding to incidents, they can have the same type of information we have at the headquarters level, and it's seamless to them. There's no hiccups. Everything just works. So one of the things that I want to say, though, is that lack of data for DHS is really not the issue. I think we've come to a point now where we have a lot of data, even remote sensing data. I'll always take data as they come in. So the Landsat stuff that was announced earlier today, we'll definitely use that. But that's not the core issue for us at DHS. Really the issue for us is how do we make this data accessible, discoverable, and easy to use? Because a lot of times, my customers, that enterprise customer, they're not going to be a GISer. They're not going to be an analyst that's going to know, I'm going to fire up this application, it's going to have a number of models that I have to run, and then I'll get that output. They're going to want to fire up their iPhone, they're going to want to see, okay, where is this incident happening relative to my location? And where are the other assets to me? And they expect that to work. So Deepwater Horizon, we had 52 terabytes of data. We had a hodgepodge of applications. Superstorm Sandy, again, a lot of data coming in from across the government. And so we needed a way to kind of manage this voluminous amounts of data. So that's where I'm going to tie in the terapixel capabilities that we deployed here. Terapixel allows us to rapidly upload disparate types of data into kind of a single belly button, if you will, application. And it allows us, at least at the headquarters level, to see how that data is shaped, how that data is being brought in, and then allows us to very rapidly push that data back out to applications that are tied in to that data store, the terapixel data store. So we typically don't give end users access to this. This is something that we do at the administrator level. But what I'm showing here is something that's very scalable and something that's accessible, at the web tier. So we don't have to go and download an app. I just go to the website. I have a cache of content, imagery content, and then I could just upload that there and then manage my content and make sure that when it's delivered back out to the consumer, everything is just seamless and it just works. And the way this works in Terapixel is that they take advantage of kind of the back-end web services that Amazon provides to make sure everything has that right throughput, that the throttling is there. So if I have 31 terabytes of data, I can go to my IT project manager and say, hey, I got this coming in. I want to make sure that we can disseminate this out in less than whatever the time frame is. So where have we used Terapixel and imagery? So this is actually a poor screenshot that I took, but this is actually Joplin, Missouri. And what you can see here, not very clear on this screen, but there's a swath of where you can see the tornado kind of tore through Joplin, right in the middle. And when this tornado hit, we immediately flew a mission to collect the imagery, see where the damage was. And when the provider came to us and said, here's your data, sir, we were faced with a dilemma. Okay, how do we get these several DVDs worth of data back out to the FEMA first responders, back out to American Red Cross, to the folks in Missouri? And so that's where we use the Terapixel app to manage that data, plus up the throughput and delivering this data, and then connect to those applications that those first responders were using. And they were able to see, based on the imagery, they were able to see imagery from previous 24 hours. So it was a very powerful tool, good success story for the department in using imagery to support a mission. So I'll tie this up there. DHS is not, like I said, we're a young organization. We're not really one of the main drivers of generating remote sensing products. My job is actually not a data creator. I go out and find data, and if I have to, we'll procure it or resource it, but I'm not a data creator. We're a consumer of data. So in that regards, we still need help in coordinating, discovering, and resourcing data. We want to leverage what's out there. We don't want to recreate the wheel. Our budget's only going down. So where there is available resources, whether that's in the intel sector or in the civil side, we're going to take advantage of that. Free is the best price for us. I'll take any questions, or you want to hold off till later? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Aha. They put a mic on you, Mike? Just realized I should have made sure of that. So Mike Wagers is our final speaker today. Mike and I met in December at a Seattle Police Department hackathon, which I've said this before, I'll just go on record. It's the best civic tech event that I've ever been to. It was a really impressive, candid conversation about how police body cameras were impacting police work. And we're also impacting privacy laws. And what could we do collaboratively as a group of technologists and citizens and police officers and public servants to solve these issues. So I'm gonna tell you actually how impressive he really is in terms of credentials. So he's the Chief Operating Officer of the Seattle Police Department. He oversees information technology, data-driven and crime analysis, public affairs, compliance, and professional standards. It keeps going, strategic policy and planning, finance, and human resources. A lot of operations at the police department. Mike most recently worked for the International Association of Chiefs of Police as the Director of Law Enforcement Operations and Support. He has also served as the Executive Director of the Police Institute at Rutgers, an action research think tank, and as an assistant professor at the Citadel. He also worked for BAE Systems in the information solutions sector. He has consulted with police departments across the country and received his PhD from Rutgers. Thank you very much, Mike, for joining us. Looking forward to this.
The only thing I take away from that introduction is I can't keep a job very long. Every time I list how long I've been at places. So, and Jed mentions the hackathon. I'll go through in a second. I think the reason it went so well is because we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, literally, we didn't know what we were doing. I found Jed and a few other people, and obviously Seattle's sort of a tech-rich environment, as you can imagine. But I'll talk a little bit about that and what we got out of it. But some of this will be a repeat if you were at the keynote session in the convention center. But I want to tell you sort of a story along 3 parallel tracks that not able to tell during the keynote session, and how they've all come together now, and is helping us think about ways to use cloud-based services around particular problems to help us address some issues that are not just affecting the Seattle Police Department, but are affecting police departments nationwide. I do have a PowerPoint deck. I doubt I'm going to use it. I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint, and I actually can't remember what the 3 or 4 slides are in there. And truthfully, I'm not really sure where the title came from either, Jed. But let me tell the story of how we got to where we are. The Seattle Police Department is under a federal consent decree, like a number of police departments are currently, and that the number that will be under federal consent decrees is going to increase. The mayor appointed a new police chief a year ago, just a few days ago. She took over. So she was brought in at the end of June last year to reform the department. So there was a lot of resistance that was holding the department back from implementing the reforms that were outlined in the federal consent decree. The mayor got fed up. The new mayor got fed up, fired the old chief, and brought a new chief in. I'd known the new chief since the mid-1990s, so I went in with her. So I was part of the transition team, and I started full-time July 29th last year. My very first meeting, I'm an East Coast guy. I mean, I flew in and arrived at about 11 o'clock on July 29th. My very first official meeting at the Seattle Police Department was at 1 o'clock around the issue of public disclosure requests and redaction. I had no idea what they were talking about. Absolutely no idea. Around the table, there were folks from the police department, city law department, and other departments trying to figure out how the Seattle Police Department could deal with this onslaught of public disclosure requests that we receive. So the discussion was that we were so far behind that we were paying out millions in fines because the fines built up daily. This is before we even hit body-worn cameras. So we stood up an interdepartmental team to look at what are the best ways, for example, to deal with video redaction. That was the one that was really hurting us. That's the one where the department lost a court case. That's the one where we paid out several $100,000 because we couldn't produce the dash cam video, which we have dash cameras in every patrol car, quick enough to requesters. And in Washington State, public disclosure law is very broad. Just about anybody can request essentially the data that we have. There are very few exceptions under Washington State law where we can withhold data. Juvenile, sexual assault victim, confidential informant. There's 4 or 5 categories. I quickly learned the first day, instead of memorizing all the categories, essentially when we get a public disclosure request in, we have to give it up. So we stood up an interdepartmental team to try to deal with the video redaction issue, because that's what everybody wanted. They wanted access to all those police videos that we're collecting. And at the time, we had 360 terabytes of dash cam video. We had 360 terabytes of dash cam video because we couldn't dump it quick enough. Under the federal consent decree, the department was using dated technology, and we couldn't prove to the court that we could use the metadata to reliably pull the videos that the court or the U.S. or our monitor wanted to see. So we stood up this interdepartmental team to say, is there a better way to redact video images? The current process was we have 12 people, and that is their job. 12 civilians, they sit there all day long redacting video and doing other handling other public disclosure requests. But they sit there and redact video. That means they're looking at all that dash cam video. They're looking, which is forward facing. They're looking at cameras that are facing in the back of our car. Until they get to an image, they stop. Until they get to an image, they stop. Until they get to an image, they stop. And by the team's estimation, about 95% of what we have had to be released without redaction. So they're watching all this video, and they're only redacting a very small percentage of what, so it's a huge waste of time. So the team stood up, put out an RFI. Are there any companies out there that has better technology to help us auto-redact what we needed to redact? So that's one parallel track. Second parallel track is literally the second meeting we had was with the city's new chief technology officer. He was standing up a privacy initiative within the city of Seattle to look at how city departments, including the police department, collect and utilize data. The end goal was to establish a set of privacy principles and a privacy toolbox that will guide the police department and other departments throughout the city in how we collect and use data. So we started that, and we actually co-sponsored the event because while there are other city departments that are certainly high profile and get a lot of requests coming in and collect a lot of data, it's the police department that everyone was interested in making sure we joined in. You may have read the news, and this helped spur it. You may remember from a year ago, this is prior to us coming in, that the city bought 2 drones, and they didn't tell anybody. They didn't talk about how they were going to collect data, so they had to shelf those 2 drones. We ended up selling them to the LAPD. They thought they were going to use them, but those drones are in a warehouse. They'd also spent a lot of DHS funding on a downtown security camera network. That wasn't well implemented. It wasn't thought through how you were going to handle all that data, and that's been shelved as well. So they spent millions of dollars on technology and equipment over the years in the police department, and had not done a very good job engaging with community stakeholders, not done a very good job talking about how they were going to handle that data. So that's the second parallel track that our team was proceeding down. But those are, that happens in police departments. We thought we were sort of, this is really great, we're ahead of the curve, we're going to try to understand this issue. It was really in October when we had an anonymous requester put in a request for any and all of our dash cam videos. And then again, under Washington state law, that could be done. He had a right to request all 360 plus terabytes of our dash cam video. Like I said in the earlier session, it really was like a DDoS attack. That's the metaphor we use, because everybody, those 12 people that we had working on redaction, all the lawyers that we had in the room, and all our, the administrative staff that was working on this, they just really seized up. Right? This is going to shut down the system. And then they started doing the permutations. And I don't know if you read the Washington Post yesterday, there are other departments out there. They'll start doing the calculations of how long it would take you to go through your video data, to redact the video data, and they'll come back at 360 terabytes or 1.8, 1.9 million videos. It's going to take you, 350 years. It's going to cost the city $50 million. It can never be done. I mean, that was the thinking of the team as well. That interdepartmental team had received a bunch of proposals coming in from tech companies saying that they could help. They could help. We went through the proposals. None of them could do any better than what we were doing currently. So we were at a point when we get this request, what are we going to do? We could just try to block it and go to court and lose again. The department has paid out over the past 2 years over $2 million for withholding data. We never paid out any money for giving out too much data. So as I mentioned earlier, we did what it's like digital community policing. We just engaged them. Ask them on Twitter, on social media, what are you looking for? Do you want to work with us? Come. We can't do this. We don't know how to handle this data. So he came in the next day, and we established a relationship with him. We walked him through the process and asked him, did he have any better ideas? This is a 24-year-old kid. This is profiling a little bit. Self-taught programmer lives in the basement of his elderly parents. Didn't go to college, went to some community college, and it's a bit socially awkward. He had better ideas that next day than all the people that we were paying to try to figure this out, and all the companies that had sent us proposals saying that they could address the issue, which they couldn't. So we started working with the requester. His name is Tim. And we thought we had the idea as well, if there's this one guy in Seattle that could think through these issues, and I mean, he was really brilliant about this stuff, it's got to be others. And that's where the idea for the hackathon came about. And we literally threw it together in a few weeks. Somehow I got introduced to Jed. Jed introduced me to some other people. We started asking, well, how do you put together a hackathon? How do we do this? But we did pull it together, and it wasn't a traditional hackathon where we're working over the weekend, people were trying to improve the code. It really was a series of presentations. We put some video data out on a server. Said if you want to participate, go download the data, show us how you can auto-redact these images, and come back and present. So we sat through presentations that day, and I think what made it worthwhile at the end of the day, it was we could see that we had something, right? We could see that we had some code. It wasn't perfect, but we could actually see that this was something we could use. I've gotten in trouble with some of our other city departments because after we had our hackathon, they wanted to have hackathons as well. It's like the cool thing to do, right? Have a hackathon. And they're developing, they've done some great work, and they developed some apps, Department of Transportation and others, to help citizens navigate the city. What we developed out of that hackathon has changed the way we do business in the Seattle Police Department and how we handle our video data. It's changed the way we're doing business currently. We've improved the code, and we made it open source so other police departments can use it to do the same thing. Coming out of the hackathon, and this is where Amazon was helpful both at the hackathon, because they were there to provide us with a lot of insight. Right? We didn't have the technical expertise to understand cloud-based solutions. Jed did, and other people did. They weren't participating in the hackathon. They were just talking to all the programmers in the room. Can you do this? Can you not do that? And we were asking questions as well. We left the hackathon. Our guys continued to improve the code. Tim, the requester, stayed engaged. His code was actually the best code of the day. It was ready to go in late January, so we had a dilemma. What are we going to do with this code? Our body camera pilot had started 6 or 7 weeks earlier. We decided instead of tackling the 360 plus terabytes of dash cam video, we'd merge it with our body camera program. So we started running our body cam video through this over redaction program. It's not the sort of proper redaction. It's not, because we're not there yet. We looked at facial detection and others. We can draw boxes around it, but it's not quite reliably there yet. All this does is overblurs everything in the video. And the first iteration that we put out, we got criticized some, saying it looked like someone rubbed Vaseline on the body cameras of our officers that were out there. But what it did was, it provided you with a blurry picture, albeit I would say still clear enough, where you could see what happened in that video. So if you want to watch hours worth of an officer engaged in demonstration management when we had some riots over MLK protest, fast forward, if you want to watch 8 hours of video where we had riots on May Day, and we had cameras on 12 of our officers out there, you could see what they were doing. You could see if they were riding their bikes. You could see if they were on the front lines. You could see if they got made an arrest. You could see if they fell to the ground wrestling a suspect. What that's done for us is it's allowed everyone to look at the video. And our thought was, if we can do this, it's going to increase transparency. People can see how our officers operate. It also cut down on those public disclosure requests. Once we started doing that, posted on YouTube, we have seen a reduction in our public disclosure requests. Not the number of requests, they still come in, but what people are looking for. So for May Day, we had, I think it was 300 minutes of body-worn video from a particular point in the riot. News organizations always want this stuff. So instead of putting in the any and all requests for 300 minutes of video, they narrowed it down to 20 minutes. So then our folks only had to go back and do the proper redaction on 20 minutes worth of video versus 300 minutes of video. So where we are now is we teamed up with Amazon, because again, if you look in the Washington Post yesterday, we never criticized another department, but there are others who have criticized us because we've been pushing the envelope. The cost for all of this, besides time and effort, but most of it was volunteer time and effort from local programmers who wanted to help us, was about $28. So we ran that first batch of video that we posted on YouTube, it was after we started the YouTube channel. But we had a large batch. We ran 2,400 videos through the program. It cost us $28 using cloud-based power that Amazon Web Services has. So when I see police departments across the country saying this is going to be way too expensive, it makes me laugh, because they're still stuck in the old model of thinking. Where we're going with this now is several things. One, we've already uploaded the code on GitHub. Programmers like that, but if you're a police chief in a small town or a mid-sized city and you don't have really smart people working for you, you don't know what GitHub is. So we started, I don't know what GitHub is. I wouldn't know what to do with the code. I wouldn't know what to do if I went there. So we started developing an app with Amazon to put in their government app warehouse. So a police department, if they wanted to try this with their body-worn program or any other video data that they're collecting, point, click, download, very easy to do. Where we're going with in the police department, though, is we want to automate the entire process. At the heart of this is proving to the public that we can be transparent, and if we're transparent as possible, that'll increase public trust. They can't, to do that, besides what we're doing now, we can't choose what we post online. We have to post the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right? So we're working now to automate the entire process, a set of clear business rules. Right? We're not going to post those things that are sensitive, confidential informants, sexual assault rape victims, juveniles. We flag interactions with vulnerable populations. We'll put that in a different container. But 98% of the stuff that we deal with, everyday, routine, police actions, will automate the process. So when the officer docks the camera, shoots it to cloud-based storage, runs through the over-redaction program, and automatically posts it to an online portal. We believe that's one way where at least in Seattle, we'll continue to regain public trust of citizens. And it's also, by the way, been noticed by the ACLU and our federal monitor, and it's helping us sort of get out of the consent decree where other departments are starting to just now get into them. So with that, I know there's a rambling story, but let me finish. We hired the requester, by the way. We hired the hacker. So after he helped us for October through May, the chief came to us and said, we're really taking advantage of the guy. Right? I've told the story with him. He lived in the basement, he still does, of his parents. He was doing this for free. So we hired him for barely minimum living wage in Seattle, $22 an hour. He's probably the hardest working employee we have. And you turn him loose, and he's doing lots of other amazing things. But I'll end on this. And we told other police departments this about working with local tech talent. It took good leadership to understand the value that someone like that guy would bring to helping us improve how we do business. We had people internal, not just cops, others, who heard that we were hiring a hacker, and they thought we were hiring a criminal. So he had to be escorted around the building for 4 months until his background check was completed. Now that's completed, he's like one of the guys walking around the department. But it took leadership to say, this is not a traditional police department employee, but he has a special talent that we can use, and we've hired him, and there are others in the pipeline that we're going to bring on board as well. With that, I'll turn it back over to Jed.
Thank you.